And we are live back with the Devil's Rink Report. Take two of the evening, guys. We apologize. It's the off season for everybody. It's the off season for
Exactly.
everybody. We are just we're just getting back on the air here. Had some technical difficulties, but we're back. We're not going anywhere. We promise. Welcome to Devil's Rink Report. Take two of the Simon Nemec trade reaction. Simon Nemec goes to the Calgary Flames in exchange for what I think, and we're just doing this from the top. Pasha heard this already. We're gonna do
Yep.
it again.
Let's do it
Uh,
again.
we're doing it again
We're doing it
for what I
live.
think. We're doing it live, doing it again. Uh, to the Calgary Flames, Simon Nemec goes in exchange for a 2027 first round pick via the Vegas Golden Knights, a 2028 first round pick via the Colorado Avalanche, a 2026 second round pick via the New York Rangers, which is kind of funny. And the Devils also received former second round pick, left shot defenseman, Eteni Morin, who I think that's actually a pretty good throw in for me there. But I want to get the instant reaction from you guys in the chat. So be sure that if you're not subscribed, you do so you can join us in the chat. But I also want to get the instant reaction here from my friend Pasha. Pasha, what do you think? What were your thoughts as soon as you saw Simon Nemec, the Calgary Flame?
Yeah, I thought, everybody kind of knew a move was coming with one of the right-handed D. There was a logjam there between Nemec, Hamilton, and Kovacevic. We've talked plenty about Hamilton blocking trades. Kovacevic blocked a trade. So Nemec was kind of the odd duck out, even though, the youngest and the highest ceiling, in my opinion. But no trade protection. Rumors of him wanting $9 million a year, which is crazy to me right now. Maybe one day he'll be worth that, but he has a lot of work to do to get to that point. And I still really think he has a high ceiling. So I'm not shitting on Nemec by any means, but I think it's a great haul for the Devils picks wise, but it's too early for me. I'm going to reserve my judgment on the trade until I see what the Devils and Sunny Mehta do with those picks, because I think that it's almost guaranteed they're going to turn around and flip them for an impact player. Now, whether that's a scoring winger or that's Connor Hellebuyck's name is out there, or potentially the third brother of who's if he so decides. I don't know, but I think that they have a lot of currency now to use to bring in a really impactful player. So I'll reserve my overall grade until we see how that plays out.
No, I hear you. Listen, and I don't want to get too excited here. I don't want to get everybody in the chat too excited here, or you, Pasha. I don't want to get you too excited here. But somebody did, and I'm gonna have to look into it. I didn't see this, but somebody did mention to me a few seconds ago. They I think commented on the last stream link. So don't worry about it. We're in the new stream link. It must be true. Somebody said Michael Russo's reporting there has not been progress between the Wild and Quinn Hughes on a contract extension. So if that's the truth, if that is in fact what Michael Russo has reported, I mean, look at all the precious assets the New Jersey Devils have just acquired. That's juicy. If there is no progress, that is really juicy. And it's funny. So, we also saw Elliot Friedman drop the Zach Werenski news earlier today that they're going to meet after the draft and discuss the future. And I had a wild idea with all this Werenski speculation, and this is just me talking, from the gut and thinking out loud. But what about a three-team trade between Columbus, New Jersey, and the Wild, where Columbus gets a haul, New Jersey gets Quinn Hughes, and the Wild get Zach Werenski? I mean, if they're not gonna, have a commitment from Quinn Hughes over in Minnesota, I don't think they want to lose a player of that caliber. But to get somebody like Werenski in return, if you're not getting that commitment from Hughes, granted, everything you gave up, I mean, that sounds pretty good to me.
Yeah, the thought crossed my mind too when I saw, Werenski's name thrown around as, a potential replacement for Quinn in Minnesota. I see at Devils Joint X says there's not supposed to be progress right now. That's fake news. That crossed my mind because technically he can't sign until July 1st. So that might be fake news, but either way, it did get me excited, and I hope it is true. But yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of options. Well, there's less options now than there was this morning. Kairu's gone. William Eklund's gone. Those are two guys that I thought, could be potential wingers the Devils would bring in. But listen, for as close as this team is, and I'm not saying they're super close, they're not a contender, but they're on the sort of the brink of that. And they, we've talked about how much I believe in their core, but they do have needs, right? They do have scoring winger need, puck moving D-man need, goaltending needs. So there's a lot of needs, a lot of work to be done, but there is a lot of assets to make it happen. So I'm very curious how this team's going to shape up here. And for everyone saying, "Oh, Hischier for Quinn Hughes or Hischier for anyone," give that a rest. Hischier is re-signing, so I don't want to hear his name in any more trade rumors.
Yeah, well, I'll see your whoever commented the that there can't be progress on an extension, and I'll raise you. Well, there's been progress on a Nico Hischier extension that I expect to happen, as soon as July 1st. So, we'll see. We'll see what happens there
We're gonna
with
need
Quinn
someone in
Hughes,
the
but
chat. Can someone track down that tweet or article, whatever?
yeah,
Because I can't stop thinking about that. If that's
yeah.
true, that's gonna get me excited.
Yeah, somebody track that down for us and put it in there so we can react to that live as well. But we also, Posh, we have here in the chat the NJ Devil who just says
My
Pasha.
guy.
Yeah, your
Best
guy.
mascot in the league, my guy.
He just decided to pop in and say hello. So yes, Simon Nemec, instant reaction to the Calgary Flames. And listen, that one of the things that I thought similarly to what you're thinking was, I did want to reserve judgment. But as my job as a journalist, I have to put out, these trade grades and such. So we did that earlier, and I
Sorry
did.
to cut you off, but a little breaking news. It's going to be the
Oh,
4th overall pick, another pick, and a player going to Buffalo for Byram. So Buffalo gets that 4th
wow.
overall pick. That's big time.
Wow, look at that. That is big time. So big haul for Bowen Byram to get the 4th overall pick plus back to Buffalo. And like Buffalo needs more assets. I mean,
Right.
just insane. But certainly, look, when we're talking about what the Devils got for Simon Nemec, I mean, look, the fact of the matter is that he's a former 2nd overall pick who doesn't necessarily have the resume thus far that, you would think a 2nd overall pick would have had, right? It's certainly been a disappointment, if you will, with Simon Nemec. It just hasn't really worked out for him in New Jersey. Now, albeit there's some continuity to that. He was a little bit blocked in the on the blue line by other right-handed defensemen, namely Dougie Hamilton. He never really gained the trust of any of his coaches to play those top minutes. We all saw what he did for his Slovakian team at the Olympics, and he actually looked pretty good. But you could see where the defensive deficiencies were there for him. So, in order for the Devils to get to 1st round picks plus for this player, I think that's a pretty good haul. And one of the things that I like to look at is, well, where did Sunny Mehta come from? He came from Florida, the man Bill Zito, who was, his mentor. And look what he did when he weaponized himself with all those draft assets, right? He went out and he made a bang of a trade and got Brady Tkachuk to unite the Tkachuk brothers and Sunrise. And, now you're looking at Sunny Mehta and saying, that's something that, the Devils probably need to do themselves. Here's the way I think of it. And, I got another video about this coming out tomorrow, but a little sneak peek here about it is I think in my humble opinion, the Devils have 2 years to convince Jack Hughes that he has a winning culture here in New Jersey. And if that doesn't happen, then those those whispers about, hey, what's going to happen with, Jack Hughes in the future? Is he going to, stick around in New Jersey? Well, if the culture doesn't look like it does in Florida or, Carolina, who just won the Stanley Cup, another team on Brady Tkachuk's no trade list. Minnesota's a team that is on people's no trade list now. Vegas is another team that's always on people's no trade list. If Sonny Mehta doesn't convince Jack Hughes that this New Jersey team, this New Jersey organization has that culture, then yeah, we're going to start having to have that conversation. Is Jack Hughes going to move on? He's got 2 years to convince him to do that because, you look at everyone that's in these discussions now, they got 2 years left in their contract. So I'm looking at the same model. And if that's not going to be the case, then maybe Jack Hughes moves on. So the work starts right now to, build that culture, make the right moves. And I think this is the start of it. Nemec wasn't going to be what they drafted him to be. He wasn't going to usurp, Luke Hughes in a power play role. He wasn't going to usurp Dougie Hamilton in a number 1 defenseman role or anything of the sort. So to get the haul they got back for him, yeah, it's good work in my opinion, and it'll be even better if they end up flipping, these assets for a player that is going to be a major impact right now. So just taking a look around the league, taking a look around what's going on right now, right? A player like Jordan Kyrou, who maybe was a potential answer, is no longer going to be one of those targets, right? He goes to the Washington Capitals. If it's not a Quinn Hughes, what are you looking at? Who do you want to see Sonny Mehta target in order for, Jack Hughes to be able to have that maybe weapon on the first line, or do they need to look somewhere else in the lineup?
I mean, there's been a lot of talk about Matthew Nyes. I think the old Toronto regime was a little more willing to part with him than the current one. I've heard mixed reports about whether John Chayka is just trying to suss out like what the market is for him, and he doesn't actually want to trade him. But I think like that type of player would be awesome alongside Jack. So depending what the price is, you know, I don't know. There's not that many names. I could see Mehta going off the board, a name that people don't have on their trade or like their top 10 trade boards or whatever. But I think they need someone beefy that can play. Mason McTavish could be a good buy low candidate, but he's not the full blown answer. He could be part of the solution, but I would not be satisfied with just getting him. But I think someone that can play and play a heavier game.
Just a little bit of context here about what we were talking about earlier. Someone added me with the report about the Hughes extension or lack thereof so far in Minnesota. So this is part of the Dylan Larkin trade request article from I believe earlier in the day. Besides free agency, Hughes is extension eligible for July 1st. The Wild have made it clear that they plan to attempt to extend his contract this summer, 1 year in advance of it expiring June 30th, but they haven't gotten down to the nitty gritty just yet with Brisson, who, yes, besides being Larkin, is Trocheck and Kane's agent as well, who also represents Hughes. Hughes said all the right things at season's end, expressing his love for Minnesota and desire to remain in the organization beyond next season. The challenge, of course, is determining what that deal looks like. So, again, a lot of people are saying the right things, but, the way I look at this is Brady Tkachuk said all the right things too, if you ask me. I mean, he never said I don't want to be here. He always said, I'm devoted or I'm loyal to this organization, and I think he meant that at the time. One of the things about these situations is I do truly think that these players, things happen in the moment where they have these conversations with organizations, and they change their minds based on maybe the answer wasn't what the GM wanted at the moment, and then he's the one that's initiating, okay, if you're not going to commit right now, maybe you would have down the line, but we don't know yet, now I'm going to move you. So just your thoughts on that report on the Quinn Hughes extension or lack of.
I mean, listen, it's music to my ears. Obviously, like that is by far and away the number one target I want on the Devils.
Yeah.
Still extremely rattled that Fitzy fumbled that. So I don't know. We'll see. I think there's arguments to be made for both sides of him staying in Minnesota or him going to Jersey. But any sort of doubt or question or lack of progress or anything like that is music to my ears. But we're just gonna have to wait and see how this one plays out.
Yeah, it's all speculation until it happens, but we will certainly see. But any parting thoughts you have on the Simon Nemec breaking news traded to the Calgary Flames, or anything else you want to get off your chest? I don't know how often you're on the microphone in the off season these days. I know you're winding it down a bit.
Yeah, well, listen, there hasn't been a lot of Devils talk in the last 6 months really, so there hasn't been especially positive Devils talk. So I'm just excited. I'm excited that there's a new vision, a new voice in Sunny Mehta, and he's putting his fingerprints on this team. I think that there's a lot more moves to come. I think obviously Brady Tkachuk was one that would have fit the mold of what the Devils needed. He's gone. Kyrie's a name. Eklund was a name. So that list of kind of the big names everyone's been talking about is dwindling down. But, wouldn't surprise me if they go off the board. So, I'm excited. Put that god-awful nightmare season in the rear view. Let's look forward. All positivity. It's disappointing Nemec didn't pan out. I thought he was going to be a pillar on the back end for a long, long time, kind of getting shades of Adam Larson. But, listen, let's see what they do with these picks. And, onwards we go. And I think, Hischier is going to resign. So enough of the bullshit Hischier rumors, and let's see what happens.
Gricic too. He'll be resigning. He'll be resigning as well. That'll be a good, nice little extension. I think it'll be more of a bridge than a longer term deal, but certainly I think it's all good things. So, but Posh, thanks for coming on. I think we'll have a lot more exciting things to talk about, possibly in the near future.
Yeah, sounds good. Thanks for having me, man. And then I'll hop back on next time there's a move, and we'll continue to discuss.
Thanks for bearing with us through the short technical difficulties, but hey, we made it. We're here.
Yeah, no problem. All right, man.
All right, buddy. Thanks,
See
man. Be
ya.
good. Have a good night.
You too.
So that was Pasha, Spittin Cliclets Game Nose producer. Thank you for joining us there, pal. And we'll have him on again. You guys know this is one of his go-tos as far as being a guest. He likes being around and coming here, so certainly appreciate him hopping on. So yes, listen, Simon Nemec, he goes to the Calgary Flames in exchange for with Max Siplikov. By the way, we haven't mentioned that. We probably should. Max Siplikov goes the other way as well, in exchange for a plethora of draft picks. And here's my assessment on this, with without any interruptions here or anything like that. So again, the Devils trade Nemec, who was heavily rumored for a while to be traded, right? Those rumors that he was requesting to be traded were not true, but what is true is that although he wasn't traded, he is still certainly, someone that Sunny Mehta was looking at to move because he had value. And it makes sense, right? 11 goals this year, 26 points in 68 games, and he certainly took a step forward. That might have been his ceiling as far as, how well he's going to conduct himself in the NHL. I'm not saying he's done developing at this point. He's only 22 years old. But one of the problems, one of Simon Nemec's issues is on, the back end. He has a bit of a hard time defensively, and there are a number of ways that happened, right? In their own zone, he wasn't winning his puck battles. And then trying to break out, there were a lot of first passes that were intercepted, or, trying to move that puck in transition, the forecheck was just too heavy for him and he would fold and, a turnover would be forced. I mean, there are a lot of reasons why Nemec defensively wasn't great. Now, yes, he does have that offensive prowess. He does have that clutch gene, that clutch ability, right? How many late game goals did he score, or overtime goals did he score last season that you said, oh, okay, this kid has the clutch factor? And, again, he's another player who, when you give him more minutes, when you feed him more minutes, he looks better. Maybe it's a confidence thing, but certainly Nemec is a guy who needs more minutes to thrive. And he'll get that in Calgary, but he just wasn't going to get that in New Jersey for the reasons that he wasn't going to usurp a Luke Hughes. He wasn't going to usurp a Dougie Hamilton in any of their roles. He wasn't going to get the power play minutes. He wasn't going to get the number one defenseman minutes. Was he going to get top four pairing minutes? I mean, he might have been able to work himself up that way, but now, the Devils have more of a clear path on the right side with Hamilton, with Kovacevic, with Brett Pesce, and it's just there was no room for Simon Nemec, so they move off of him, and they move off of him for, again, a package that I didn't think that they were going to be able to get. And look, when you listen to the words that Sunny Mehta said when he came in, he believes the Devils are on the brink of being a perennial playoff team. I say that at the same time, knowing that he knows, meaning Sonny Mehta knows, that he's going to have to convince Jack Hughes that this is a team where he can, cultivate a winning product on the ice year in and year out. That is exactly what Jack Hughes wants. And again, there is reason to also believe that Jack Hughes actually loves being here. We all heard what he said when he came back from the Olympics. It wasn't just about, being proud to be an American and being on that Team USA team, but he was proud to be a New Jersey Devil. So that was great news for New Jersey Devils fans to hear as well. But, winning is a huge factor in all this. That's why you're seeing guys like Dylan Larkin want to leave, Connor Hellebuck want to leave, possibly Zach Werenski. We'll see what happens with him, right? So the fact of the matter is that the Devils get a haul for Nemec because there's no way in my mind that Sonny Mehta is going to sit on his hands and not turn around and use these assets. In fact, I've been told as much that that's going to happen, right? Someone, that is privy to, some of this inside knowledge texted me after someone asked me on Twitter, what do you think is, going to happen next with these picks? Like, do you see something else happening? And all I said was like, look who Sonny Mehta learned from. He learned from Bill Zito. And what did he just do? Bill Zito just turned the assets he acquired for Mackie Semiskevich into Brady Tkachuk. I mean, again, that's just the long and short of it is Bill Zito is an aggressive, calculated GM. And Sonny Mehta is, we all know, a calculated GM. We're about to learn about how aggressive he's going to be. And again, I don't think he believes there's a lot of time to sit on his hands, and I don't think he wants to sit on his hands because I think he knows he's got a lot of work to do in order to make sure that Jack Hughes stays happy. Because if Quinn Hughes doesn't end up coming this summer or next, yeah, yeah, then we're going to have to start having that uncomfortable conversation about Jack Hughes, but we're certainly not there yet. But this was step one in the right direction, if you ask me. So, Simon Nemec, Calgary Flame, Max Siplikov, Calgary Flame, and the great part about Max Siplikov being part of that deal is that the Devils cleared $2.5 million in cap space. Now they have about 13.15 million in cap space to conduct themselves this summer. We'll see what that looks like. Do the Devils go after a Jason Robertson? Do they circle back on a Matthew Nyes? Like, these are legitimate questions that you can ask. And look, if Bill Guerin gets a sense of, hey, Quinn Hughes is not going to extend here, not going to commit to us here, maybe all these assets are gonna go gonna go out west to Minnesota, right? That's something that certainly you could see happening too if things get crazy here, crazy. Um, but again, these are all this is all just speculation right now. All we know is that the Devils have this plethora of assets, and it's not so much speculation that I think Meta is going to turn around and use those assets on something more immediate for more immediate help. I have been told that that is the direction they want to go in. So I think you can take that how you'd like, but that's what I'm told. And so, we might be looking at a busy. I mean, it's just Tuesday, guys. The draft is on Friday. We have 3 days left to get there. There could be a lot more movement between now and then. I mean, since we've been on, Bowen Byram's been traded to the Chicago Blackhawks for the fourth overall pick, and other stuff here. So, I got another tag here that New Jersey and Buffalo are a couple of teams to keep tabs on in respect to Connor Hellebuyck. I'm sure there are other teams poking around there. Yeah, and look, that makes sense to me too, right? We saw the report that the Devils are shopping the rights, or not the rights, the contract that Jacob Markstrom signed. It's going to take a lot to move him, I think. How much is it going to take? Maybe not all, as much as you might think. We saw in the Stanley Cup playoffs that goaltending is kind of voodoo, right? And you can have a half decent goaltender so long as the defense is good. And Jacob Markstrom does tend to have that 1 year on, 1 year off capability where he's really bad 1 year and really good another. So maybe last year was his bad year. I get he's on the wrong side of 35. It's a tough bet to make, but who's to say that Sonny can't move a Jacob Markstrom and maybe bring in with all those assets a Connor Hellebuyck? I mean, that's the kind of move that, yeah, I mean, look at what the Jets did. They're far less skilled. Not last year, the year before. They're far less skilled than the New Jersey Devils up front. And he kind of goaltended them, backstopped them to a huge, huge year. I mean, they were fantastic 2 years ago. And then again, Connor Hellebuyck goes ahead and wins the gold medal with Team USA. I mean, I'm sure he would want to join Jack Hughes, right? No reason why he wouldn't. So it is. Look, there's going to be a lot happening. There's going to be a lot of rumors. There's going to be a lot of people talking about what's going to happen next. But we'll find out in due time. But I do want to get to some of these comments because there are a lot of you here. If we have any chat questions or things that anybody wants to have answered here, so I think if we have some comments here that we want to throw up on the board, Sean, find me one, and then we can certainly have a conversation with chat here. So, and if you're listening and you can't, join the chat just yet, well, just be sure to hit that subscribe button and join away so that you can join the chat and join the community and be here for all of the live streams that we have. So. Devil's Joint says Hellebuyck is 33. Yeah, that's true. The Devils do not need that. I mean, look, there's not a ton of goaltenders available out there, and the fact of the matter is that Connor Hellebuyck is the best goaltender in the NHL, hands down. I know he didn't win the Vezina Trophy this year, but he won a gold medal, and he was the Vezina winner last season. And by no means is he regressing to the point where you're going to say to yourself, "Oh, he's not going to be able to, backstop a championship winning team." I certainly think he is, and with the way goaltenders take care of themselves now, and just hockey players in general, I think there is plenty more gas left in his tank that, for the Devils to be contenders and to get him for, let's say, 5 years. I mean, how much? I think that's what's left on his contract, if I'm not mistaken. I think it's 5 years left on that deal. I could be wrong. Don't quote me on it. We're checking now via our friends over at Puckpedia. but I think that, again, having him for, even if it's 4 years, I mean, the Devils have, okay, year 3 of 7. So yeah, he's got 5 years left on that deal. No, sorry, 4 years left on that deal. And that's a good amount of time for the Devils to make some noise in the playoffs. And look, if it's not Connor Hellebuck in net and he's, mentoring when, Mikhail Yegorov comes, or if he's, helping win a championship in tandem with Jake Allen. I mean, there's a good pipeline of goaltenders here with Yegorov and Malik, and Jake Allen signed for the next 4 seasons. That there's a lot of opportunity here for the goaltending if the Devils can move off of a Jacob Markstrom with Yegorov and Malik in the lineup. So it'll be interesting. It'll be really cool to see. I would think that it's a good move to go out and get Connor Hellebuck because, again, goalies like him don't just grow on trees. But certainly, I say that in the same breath that, the Devils do need a forward, right? They certainly need somebody to play on Jack Hughes's line indefinitely with Jesper Bratt. No more, revolving door of Andre Palat, and Connor Brown was nice on the first line with Jack Hughes, but you do want him to be, a depth player. I just think that, if you're gonna go in all in on Hellebuck, great, but you have to figure out another way to get another forward there as well. So we'll see what happens. But if we got another one here, Sean, let's keep him rolling. Michael Mignoni says we all know moves had to be made. I wanted Nemitz to excel here, but he got some assets to help get a top six swing for Jack. We save on his 8 to 10 million AAV, and we clear $2.25 million in cap space from the Palat trade. I think that's a great point. Again, it's about creating cap space. You get a ton of assets, which, in my opinion, these multiple first round picks. I saw somebody say, like, this is essentially 3 second round picks, but I also saw somebody say that 35th overall selection in this draft is essentially a first round pick. So it's so funny. Like, you can look at it one way or another. I mean, having the 35th overall selection in this draft, people talk about, oh, this draft is not, necessarily the strongest. And then we get closer to the draft and you're hearing about all these players who could maybe move up in the draft, and maybe it is a stronger draft, right? I think this 35th overall pick is actually going to be a strong asset. I think it is going to have near first round value because it is kind of near the first round of the 2026 NHL draft on Friday. So yeah, I get it that it is essentially a second round pick. But if you look at what and I tweeted this earlier. If you look at what Brady Tkachuk was traded for, right? He was dealt for, scrolling here real quick, he was dealt for the number 9 pick and the number 25 pick in the upcoming draft. Well, the Devils have similar value, not exact value, but similar value in the 12th overall pick and the 35th pick. Then you factor in that the 2029 first round pick is in there in the Kachuk deal as well, um, and a second rounder in 2027. Well, the value of that 2029 first round pick is less than the value of the 2027 first round pick the Devils just got. And the second rounder in 2027 is less value than the second rounder the Devils just got. So you're looking at almost equal value in the assets that Sunny Mehta just got for Simon Nemec. And how is he going to flip that? He can probably move that for a major return. So opening up that cap space, not having to pay Simon Nemec. I don't think he was going to get 8 to 10 million. I think he was going to ask for the Luke Hughes contract or something similar. I think ultimately they would have bridged him at something like maybe $7 million for 3 years. But not having to deal with that, not having to go to arbitration, and ultimately clearing cap space, the floor is now more open than it was a day ago for the Devils to make a major move and make a major improvement, whether it's in goal or on Jack Hughes's left side, because again, we are all tired, including myself, of watching Jack Hughes and Jesper Bratt create some magic just for it to fall short because the left winger can't finish the product that was just transposed on the ice. So we'll see. I mean, thank you for the comment, Michael. I think it's a really good point, and it's going to be exciting. It really is. I don't see Sunny Mehta sitting on his hands over the next few days, and just going into the draft and just making some picks and then going to free agency. I think there's going to be more movement. We'll see, but Sean, let's pull up another one here. Captain THC says, considering the return, it doesn't look like there were many GMs interested in Nemec. That's got to be why Sunny went the futures route, or he's worried about Nemec getting an offer sheet. I think that there's always talk about offer sheets, and that talk is coming up again. And it's certainly possible, right? They certainly could have faced the situation where they were going to get an offer sheet. Other teams can see Puckpedia, and they have their internal cap resources as well. But they saw the Devils have only about, before this trade, 12 million in change in assets, in cap space in order to get, Arsenij Gricic signed and Simon Nemec signed and Paul Cotter signed. And how was that going to affect their future? But while also wanting to upgrade in the forward group. And they weren't going to have enough cap space. So an offer sheet maybe was realistic. Now they don't have to deal with that. But as far as other teams not being interested, I think there were plenty of teams interested. I know upwards of like 10 had made calls on him. Now, this might have just been the best offer. The other thing, too, is that we, did hear, and it was something I reported, I think, as recently as yesterday, that Dougie Hamilton, that was a player that, yes, the Sunny Mehta regime certainly values Dougie Hamilton, but they, weren't going to necessarily just trade him just because, right? The Tom Fitzgerald regime was going to just trade him because they wanted to get rid of his cap space, or his cap hit. But the Sunny Mehta regime is different in the sense that they value him. Um, they know that he has, if you look at his analytics for the last 35 games after he was scratched, I mean, he played like a true number one. The first half of the season did not support that at all. He did not play well, and then they scratched him, and all of a sudden he was playing excellently. It seems like that might be a relationship that was fixed. And given the fact that Nemec was traded, I don't think the Devils are going to now end up moving Dougie Hamilton unless there's some sort of move that they just can't refuse. So, as far as other GMs not being interested in Nemec, I think that that's not true. I think there were plenty of teams interested in him. I think Dougie's name getting out there was to just see, like, can we get something maybe better than the return we're getting here in order to maybe make moves elsewhere. But it looks like ultimately this was the package they settled on. And, again, it's still a really good one. We just went over similar value, maybe not as good, but similar value to the Brady Tkachuk deal. So we will see. And look, I think that Sunny Mehta needs to be smarter than Steve Staios. I do like William Eklund as a player. I don't think that was the player to go get and basically say, like, here's your Brady Tkachuk replacement. First of all, if Eklund does not play as well as Brady Tkachuk, he's never going to hear the end of it from those fans. It's just the fact of the matter, of the situation. So I do think that Sunny Mehta needs to go out and make sure. I mean, look, if you're not replacing Simon Nemec, the blue line is set. But what you do have to do is go get a top six forward for Jack Hughes' line. So thank you for the question. Let's get to another one. And just, Sean, let me know how many we have here on the back end, just so that I could be prepared for how many we're going to be talking to today. So Jay Snow Rivals says, what'd you think of the Cairo move? It's been so busy. I didn't necessarily see what the Cairo return was. Let me look this up real quick, because, again, that was a player that I felt like I saw the comments on Jordan Kyrou, like, he's soft and he cries, yada yada. But I think that he was a player who Jordan Kyrou for Connor McMichael, Milton Gastrin, and the 16th overall pick. Wow. Okay. So, okay, Kyrou to me, let's just start with the player. Kyrou to me is a player who leans into the strength of the New Jersey Devils, right? He's a fast, skilled, speedy winger who can clearly finish with multiple 30 plus goals under his belt. I think he has multiple 35 plus goals seasons under his belt. And he leans into the strength of the Devils. Now, do they need more of that? Maybe not necessarily. Maybe they need somebody who is more of a Brady Tkachuk like player, right? And then Matthew Nyes is another guy who I think of who would be a really good fit for this team. Maybe that's somebody they need more of in order to be successful. But this return for Jordan Kyrou is exuberant. I think that that's a really good return for the St. Louis Blues. I mean, Connor McMichael is a Again, I know Devils fans don't like him, but he's a good player. He's a good centerman. I think he's also friends with Robert Thomas, so that maybe helps them out, keeping him. Milton Gastrin is I know, a valuable prospect. And look, the 16th overall pick in this draft. Again, we're talking about a draft where, at first, oh, it's not that strong a draft, it's not that great, but then, again, we get closer to the draft and it's like all these players can move up the draft because they're so great. And now you're, saying to yourself, okay, 16th overall is actually pretty good, So, really, really big return for Jordan Kyrou. If the Devils paid that kind of price, you're looking at maybe, uh, is it something like 12? Um, Dawson Mercer and Lenny Hamanaho? It might be that. So, the fact that the Devils didn't have to make this trade is actually pretty good, I think. Thank you for the comment, Jay Snow. Let's get to one or two more here, maybe. Unless we got a lot of them, Sean, you tell me. Nick Gallo says, think we see Mercer 12 overall and LeChance for Nyes. I think I proposed um, something very similar in by way of trade. I don't remember I don't remember what trade I think I that might have been the exact package actually, now that I think of it. Unless I maybe swapped Nemitz for 12th overall. But again, so here's why I think that works, right? Let's just say the Maple Leafs want to play ball and will trade Matthew Nyes. Whether it's Mercer or Nemitz, which it can't be now, right? So let's just call it Mercer. Well, they're getting a replacement player for Matthew Nyes, right? He's not as good as Nyes, but he can play NHL minutes right now. They're getting 12th overall, right? They have first overall, more players to put in their cupboard for the future. Who knows what's going to happen in Toronto? Is Austin Matthews going to stay? And if he doesn't, it kind of spells the end for that team with that core, right? The McKenna core is going to, make itself present, but not really yet, right? They want to add McKenna to the current core of Matthews and Nylander and hope that they could win with those guys. But if the McKenna core turns things over, well, there's your replacement for Matthew Nyes at a big body in Shane LaChance. Now, again, is he as good as Matthew Nyes? No, he's not. But he's a bottom six player who can bring a similar presence. And again, I've watched Shane LaChance, and I'm not saying that he's a direct Matthew Nyes replacement, but if you need a guy who's maybe on the second unit power play who can clean up the garbage in front of the net, he's really, really strong. With his net front battles, he has really good hands in close to the goaltender or in tight spaces. He can win his puck battles on the board. So you have a guy who's cut from the same cloth as Nyes in LaChance. You get a player of replacement in Mercer for Toronto and 12th overall. I think that's a good swap for between the Devils and the Toronto Maple Leafs. We'll see. Maybe that's something that they can make happen. I would be very interested to see if they can do that. But thank you, Nick Gallo, for the comment. Let's get to the next one, Sean. Madison DeVito says, bring home Quinn Hughes. Also, what do we think a Quinn Hughes deal looks like today? In terms of trade, if you're asking for a trade, it's going to be a big one. I think now it has to start with Anton Silyev. Before it was going to be Simon Nemec, but now it's not going to be. How are the Devils going to get um, Quinn Hughes without Simon Nemec in the fold anymore? Again, it's not going to be. I don't think it's going to be as easy. That's a defenseman that I think that was valued by Minnesota, not as much as Quinn Hughes, obviously, but I do think it was a player that they valued. I think it would have to start with Anton Silyev. And from there, you kind of have to just add whatever you have to, right? You're adding 12th overall. You're adding probably these two first round picks that they just got. You're probably adding Dawson Mercer. They're going to want something major in return. And I think you have to understand it's when I say major in return, the Wild don't have to trade Quinn Hughes just yet. If he, does end up saying he's not going to sign long term with them, but if they're going to trade him, that's the reason is because he isn't going to give them a commitment. That automatically brings the value down on how much the buying team has to give up for him. And so you're looking at maybe a package of, again, 12th overall, Anton Silyev, Dawson Mercer, pick another couple of picks, the two that they just got in the Simon Nemec trade, and perhaps, I don't know, Lenny Hamanaho, right? It's going to be big. It's going to be huge. because they gave up a lot to get him. So it's harder to see without Nemec, but um, in the same breath, these 2 first-round draft picks that they got, you never know. It could happen. So thank you for the question, Madison. Let's do a few more, unless we have no more. I think we have no more. All right, that's going to do it for us today on the Devil's Rink Report. Simon Nemec traded to the Calgary Flames. The Nemec era in New Jersey is over. Thank you for coming to the live. Thank you for dealing with our technical difficulties a little bit earlier in the day. Thank you for coming back. Thank you for being with us at 9:05 on a Tuesday night to discuss the Devils' latest, because a lot has happened and there's still a lot happening. So stay tuned on your X feeds. Stay tuned with us here at Devil's Rink Report. Stay tuned with us over at New Jersey Hockey Now, just so that you can get all your latest Devils news. Simon Nemec and Max Siplikov over to the Flames. The Devils get a haul in return, and in terms of assets, let's see what they do with them in the coming days. Guys, I think it's going to be coming days. But thank you so much for being here. Be sure to like the video, subscribe to Devil's Rink Report. We'll be back with more soon. We'll be live on Friday with the instant reaction from the draft, and let's see if we even get there, guys. But thank you for being here, and we'll talk on the next one.